My name is Kevon. I am a member of the academic staff at the University of the West Indies. We are here at the Murray's farm at Maids Fair, Adams Valley, and we are looking at some of the technologies that these guys have implemented over the last few years. Based on what I've seen since the beginning of this learning journey, I'm very much impressed, and it links into the very idea of some of the adaptation strategies that our local farmers are already putting in place. And we see where there are areas in which we can provide support in terms of strengthening their productive capacity and their resilience against changes in climate, and also in terms of economic conditions. I've been involved in the JAMI, which is the social intermediary project, in terms of the feasibility study. I worked closely with Carlos Astatag from Coder, and we basically did a series of studies and desktop research looking at different examples around the world, trying to find out the basic characteristics of social intermediaries, looking at the strengths, looking at the weaknesses, applying the Osterwalder's business model in terms of coming up with a proper ownership and business strategy for the JAMI. JAMI, of course, is the Jamaica Market Access Initiative. And I basically did a lot of the coordination of the primary fieldwork. I'm trying to look at existing intermediaries in Jamaica, trying to find out their characteristics, the type of goods and services that they offer, and the services and goods that they do not offer, in terms of the market gaps that are available, in which the JAMI could probably kind of tap into the market. Both in terms of what the market segments, in terms of the people within the supermarket and the restaurant and hotel chains might require, but also in terms of the different services that we can offer to farmers in terms of building their productive capacity. So far, the feasibility study in terms of the findings have been really good, and the recommendation basically suggests that there is a great for the JAMI, and there's a market gap in terms of certain goods and certain services. Where the JAMI will go from here on is really more flexible. I don't think the findings of the feasibility study should restrict in terms of the direction in which JAMI should function. If an opportunity comes up, there should be that flexibility in terms of moving towards that. But what we need to do is to sit down and ensure that the initial objectives in terms of the social aspect of the JAMI is not compromised for anything. I personally believe that there are certain things that the Oxfam partnership broker came up with in terms of what the JAMI should offer to local farmers, in terms of bringing them up into the value chain, in terms of bridging the gap between buyers and suppliers, in terms of strengthening the local farmer, in terms of building his resilience to changes in the climate, and also in terms of withstanding some of the challenges that trade liberalization and so forth can cause. Those things need to be built in to whatever business model we pursue. My experiences with working with the partnership broker was very, very interesting. She's very skilled in terms of her ability to communicate the objectives of the project, and in terms of monitoring it. And I think the whole idea of facilitating dialogue and collaboration between the different institutions that probably wouldn't have gotten the chance to come together before was great. And what I've seen from this is that there are different partnership agreements that have evolved outside of this JAMI feasibility study, where UWI and the Christiana Potato Growers Association now has a couple of things that, in terms of projects that we're going to embark on. UWI and CIAT, the International Center for Tropical Agriculture, also have a number of interchange going on. So, I mean, just to think about those partnerships that have evolved outside of this general feasibility study, I mean, it was great. Well, first of all, based on what we've seen, there are two major threats that climate change is going to pose. In terms of the general long-term changes in temperature and precipitation parameters, and also in terms of the increased frequency of these extreme climatic events. I mean, what this feasibility study has shown in terms of the work that SEAT has done alongside the Jamai feasibility study is that we've seen some of the potential impacts that it can have in terms of the type of crops that we grow now. And what is useful, what is good about it is that it has created that foundation now, that base, in which we can now have some useful discussions in terms of looking at what we have already. The other thing too is that the different institutions and groups that are now forming these collaborative partnerships can now put the different skill assets into being, that they can probably come up with some innovations that can also help the local farming sector in terms of coming up with best practices and replicating these best practices. The issue that Jamaica has always had over the years is doing proper research and development programs, putting them in place and scaling it up. Where the role of the state is in terms of the Ministry of Agriculture, I don't know. But right now, we have their ears. I mean, we are in dialogue with them. And for the first time, I think my department and the University of the West Indies in general have this opportunity in terms of doing practical work with these guys that the government will probably take into consideration. Before, we were operating without any serious recognition from the government. But groups like Oxfam is really kind of, you know, focusing them in terms of what is already being done in Jamaica. And I mean, that's good for us.
Another
well, I'll share this with you. The learning workshop has opened up a lot of opportunities for me in terms of collaborating with people from different backgrounds, in terms of having different skill sets, but yet they're very relevant to some of the problems that we're facing here in Jamaica. And over the last few days, I've been able to share contact information with different individuals that I think will help to advance some of our research projects here in Jamaica. And I mean, that is something that I'll cherish for